Okay, I will call to order the Haywood County Board of County Commissioners meeting for June 5th, 2017, and ask everyone to please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Let us pray. Dear Lord, we thank you for giving us another day, and we want to ask that you be with us as we meet and make decisions for our county. We ask for wisdom and knowledge as we discuss our county's business, and ask that you be with us in all that we do. I ask that you watch over all our employees and their families and grant them safety as they do their jobs, and bless each one of their family members. I pray a special prayer for our county that we would continue to grow financially and economically, and be with each citizen that we could work together in accomplishing this goal. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Okay, I'd like to thank everyone for being here this morning and move through our agenda. And the first thing is the call to public hearing. Ask David Francis to come up, the Tax and Solid Waste Administrator, for a request for a public meeting to be held on July 18th. Morning, David.
Good morning, Commissioners. Hope I had a lovely weekend. It sure was pretty here at Haywood County. Before you, a little bit cart before the horse, I'm going to do a presentation concerning the Francis Farm landfill and the assessment for corrective measures. But per our protocol, when we call for a public hearing or public meeting, it is first item on the agenda. So what this public meeting would do would be to detail the ACM, or the Assessment Corrective Measures, on Francis Farm for the public. We will have that meeting here on Tuesday, July 18th at 5:30. The Commissioners, it's not a requirement that you all sit in the chairs that you will be in. What we'll do at that meeting is go over the PowerPoint that we have that you'll see this afternoon. The engineers will be available from McGill Associates and BLE, who are the engineers of record on this project. They will be here to address the public and any concerns and questions they might have during that meeting.
So did you say, David, that this is our regular scheduling meeting on July 18th?
No, July 17th is your regular scheduled meeting.
So this is a separate meeting,
July 18th,
and we don't necessarily, we just need to be here, but we don't have to be seated up here.
Correct.
It's not necessarily a commissioner's meeting.
This is part of the administrative code as we proceed through the assessment corrective measures. So this is part of that code that we have to have the public meeting. We did a similar public meeting back in 2011 to address some of the concerns out there. And as you are aware of, since that time, we have provided public water to the affected houses out there on Francis Farm Road. So we alleviated a lot of those concerns, that there was any contamination, and since that time, we of course have, defined the limits of contamination for Francis Farm.
Okay, Commissioners, have any questions about setting that hearing?
Yep. And a public notice will run in the newspaper announcing the public meeting.
We need to take an action on that, or just set it?
I would just take action calling for the public meeting and notice to be published.
All right. I entertain a motion to call for a public meeting regarding the corrective measures to be performed at the Francis Farm landfill to be held on July 18th, 2017 at 5:30.
So move.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. So a meeting is called for July 18th, 2017 at 5:30 to address the corrective measures to be made to Francis Farm landfill.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we got public comment. I have one person signed up for public comment. Anyone after this initial person may come up and speak. We like to limit everyone speaking for approximately 5 minutes. 3 minutes. Monroe Miller. Morning, Mr. Miller.
Good morning. On April 6, 2016, I submitted a request for public information regarding prying information out of David Francis. I was refused. This originated back on your agenda for July 20th, 2015, when you approved a contract with McGill Engineering, which included item C, which is contract for White Oak landfill capacity study for $14,300. You commissioners, with the exception of Brandon Rogers, along with Ira Dove and Stoney Blevins, were copied on 6 separate requests for this information. On April 8th, 2016, Candace Way replied, Mr. Francis said that the analysis is not yet complete and will be presented to the board when available. On April 20th, 2016, Candace Way indicated David Francis has the other part of your request, referenced Francis Farm, and will provide these documents when he is able. Well, evidently David Francis was never able. I never received the results from David Francis for the McGill contract for the White Oak landfill capacity study. This is not top secret classified military information. This is a study, presumably completed by McGill, that was paid for with money collected from Haywood County taxpayers and being kept from Haywood County taxpayers. I want to see the McGill report for the White Oak landfill capacity study. You have on your agenda today to approve new contracts with McGill administered by David Francis. Before you approve those, how about getting a commitment out of David Francis and Ira Dove when a request for public information is made regarding these contracts that the public does not get stonewalled? I appreciate your allowing time for me to express my opinion. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Miller. Would anyone else like to address the board? Okay, if not, if you all can check on Mr. Miller's request and we'll get back to him on that. Next is constituent concerns. Mike?
None.
Kevin?
I have a few that Ira's addressing.
Okay.
None from me.
Okay. All right. Then we'll move on to administrative agency reports. Next is the update on Francis Farm landfill assessment for corrective measures. I assume, David, this is what will be part of what will be presented.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct, yes. Commissioners, you saw a similar report back in August of 2014 when we started first talking about the assessment of corrective measures. There's a lot of jargon that goes within ACM. You're going to hear CAP, CAP, Francis Farm is FFLF. You almost need a glossary of terms when we discuss this. So if I go too fast or I use something jargony, please stop me and ask me to clarify that. The environmental compliance update for Francis Farm landfill. Landfill history, Francis Farm landfill. Filth, FFLF, accepted waste from 1973 to 1993. When the current White Oak landfill was opened up, the landfill was closed in 1995. County required to maintain closed landfill post-closure care. What's post-closure care? Landfill gas, methane monitoring, groundwater and surface water monitoring, facility maintenance, stormwater management, soil cap cover over the waste, road and access, sediment and erosion control. Where are we with environmental compliance problems? Landfill gas concentrations exceed the limits under North Carolina DEQ rules, Department of Environmental Quality. Groundwater contaminants exceed limits under North Carolina Department of Environmental Quality rules. Landfill gas compliance. So what we did, if you remember, is that we bought several properties around the boundary there. The Lewis property, the Shelton property, and the Stevens property to expand the boundaries because the methane monitoring wells was sitting right on top of the landfill, right on our boundary line. So when we purchased those properties, then we were not we got to move the gas wells further out. We became in compliance with those. So we had new landfill gas monitoring plan approved, new landfill gas monitoring wells installed, landfill gas recovery system operational, and now the facility is compliance for landfill gas. Here's a new facility map that shows the wells, the existing wells, and the other wells, that some of the wells have been abandoned since that time due to our new compliance plan. Groundwater compliance. Assess the extent of the groundwater impacts. Identify remedies in a report, a public meeting to discuss the report, is what we went over earlier, and select the remedies and prepare a plan to implement the plan. So the facility returns to compliance for groundwater compliance. So as you know, there was, this is the groundwater flume here. We got it in black and white. So I don't know which one's better to see. You can see the concentrations are heavier right in the center of the cap, where you see the red, the orange, the yellow, and it expands out. The purple line there is where it shows that those boundaries where there's not any more contamination, or the contamination is below the parts per million. That's what all these parts, they do it by parts per million. And there's a lot of enes in here, and enes are bad. Benzene, trichlorolithene, and a host of other enes that an engineer or a chemist would be better suited to discuss than I am. But those enes exceed the allowances allowed by the Administrative Code of North Carolina. So what are the remedies and are proposed? Control the contaminant sources, the landfill gas mitigation system, landfill leachate mitigation restrictive cover, which is putting dirt over, the natural attenuation of groundwater, and active groundwater remediation is a contingency only. If you remember, we were lucky enough to acquire dirt from the Highway 209 project. That saved, McGill negotiated that deal with the contractor there on our behalf, and we got $1 million of dirt for around $300,000. We did our first cap maintenance since the landfill was closed last year, and we put another 43 cubic yards on top of the cap, the very center of the landfill. Unfortunately, there is waste that goes all the way down the hill, if you're familiar with the landfill site. That waste that goes down the hill over there, and we'll have to bring that dirt that we brought and put over on the Shelton property, what we purchased there. The 100,000 cubic yards is resting there, in anticipation of the assessment for corrective measure in the cap plan. So we're moving that dirt over there to back onto the cap and where the waste is. So what are our next steps? Conduct the public meeting that we discussed, modify the remedy report if needed, and formally select the remedies. Prepare a corrective action plan, cap, and continued landfill gas and groundwater and surface water monitoring. What's included in the corrective action plan? Design of a restrictive cover, geotechnical engineering, detailed design plan, technical specifications, facility monitoring plan, and schedule of implementation, a contingency plan, and of course the compliance plan. What's after the cap? Implementation of remedies, bid package of cover installation, select contractor, install cover, and modify and operate gas system. Monitor landfill, gas leachate, groundwater, and surface water, and evaluate their effectiveness. What contractors are needed to get us here? Services by McGill, BLE, and Shealy, who is the groundwater and surface water testing company. A public meeting, assistance, finalize remedy report, and formally select remedies. Prepare cap for DEQ approval, prepare bid packages after the cap, and conduct semi-annual sampling of the water, and continue compliance reporting. So the schedules, public meeting date, which we did earlier, finalize the remedy report, and formally select the remedies. Prepare cap for DEQ approval, prepare bid packages after cap, and conduct semi-annual sampling and continue compliance reporting. How is the cost and how is it funded? Projected cost is $5 million. When we first started this project 3 years ago, we were about $8 million. So the savings that we've attained from purchasing the dirt at 209 and the plan that is being submitted, we've actually been able to lower that down to $5 million. As you know, the availability fee was raised in 2015 in anticipation of this construction project coming forward, because you just can't build money on an old, dirty landfill. And so the availability fee is financing the project. And then here's a cap implementation plan. We are advertised for, the next thing we'll do after today is advertise for the public meeting, have the public meeting in July, and take those comments and start working on the CAP plan and prepare the corrective action plan, submit that plan for DEQ for approval, and then advertise and bid, and then construction, which will take from now till the spring of 2019. Okay. I have Mr. Cathy here will be able to talk about some of the remedies that we submitted to the state for the selection of, the CAP or the ACM, and then the remedy that we are leaning towards and why we're leaning towards that remedy. That one? One more. Keep going back to ACM. Just listed let's see, it's right there. What's this? That really doesn't matter. Okay. Let's see if we can find it. I have this right here too.
Thanks, staff, for the invitation. Thank you, Commissioners, Mr. Chairman, for the opportunity to speak to you this morning. A little bit about the ACM process. Of course, that's required by North Carolina Administrative Code, and basically it's a process that you follow specifically through the solid waste rules that says this is what you have to evaluate for landfill. That's what's been going on now for some 8 years with installing monitoring wells, as I've been in front of you several times. Most of that work's been performed, all that work's been performed with Bunnell Lammon's engineering as far as finding the concentration of groundwater and gas concentrations at the landfill. As Mr. Francis said, the gas concentrations we now have in control based off the compliance boundary of the landfill being expanded with the purchase of the properties. Now groundwater has to be considered. So purchasing property is not a means to effectively control groundwater contamination. You have to control groundwater contamination by controlling the the production of the contamination and/or treat the contamination. So in the ACM process, we looked at several options of evaluating these contaminants. Of course, the landfill cap, multiple caps were evaluated through a EPA model called the HELP model, Hydraulic Evaluation of Landfill Performance, where we evaluate the effectiveness of caps. We looked at those and evaluated a soil cap with a geomembrane liner. And again, looking at the most cost-effective option, the landfill cap appears to be the most cost-effective option. That's what was proposed, along with monitored natural attenuation and a contingency plan of phytoremediation to the state. And I don't want to get into the nitty-gritty of what those are, but basically phytoremediation is treating the landfill, planting on the landfill cap so that some of the contaminants can be, through evapotranspiration, can be evacuated from the soils and the water and leachate from the landfill cap. So the primary goal here is to stop infiltration of the landfill cap. We will stop some 99% of the infiltration through the landfill cap. It's believe it or not, it's 60 million gallons a year of water through the rainfall can go through this area. And so we're going to basically reduce that by 99% with the landfill cap. So now the source of that will be cut off, if you will. So for expanding, for the contaminants to expand. So that's the purpose of the landfill cap project. So of course our cap project will consist of regrading the landfill. It'll include demolition of all the trees that are on the portion of the landfill cap now. It'll include finding the extents of all the waste and all the places where we found some outside of the original intended waste boundary before. And so we'll have to define that so that can be properly capped. Will be stormwater controls that will likely be located on the recently purchased Betty Lewis property. It'll be basically rebuilding a gas system that will be built between the geomembrane liner and the top of the vegetative cover cap. And so that can continue to operate, continue to pull leachate from the landfill. And then, we'll monitor it over, as required by post-closure care and report to the state for monitored natural attenuation, which basically is just the natural breakdown of some of those constituents into other constituents. And you show that that is naturally occurring over time, but the concentrations are not continuing to move or grow in strength in the monitoring wells that we're required to monitor. So that's basically all I have specific. If any of you have any questions, I'll be glad to answer them.
Commissioners? So, Mark, you are looking at the most cost-effective methods for us to correct what's occurred.
Most definitely.
Okay.
The other methods are extraction of groundwater, and you can just imagine that the amount of volume that you have to extract and treat and pump back in, those aren't effective.
Okay.
So basically, working on the source of the contamination, or at least the groundwater that pushes the contamination through the waste mass, that's our most effective method.
Okay. So just to recap, and this is like a kindergarten version of it, but essentially, Haywood County built this landfill years ago. And when we built it in compliance with whatever regulations were in place at the time, which
Correct.
There weren't really many regulations in place at the time. And over time, what we've learned is when you build a landfill like that and we didn't have any kind of it wasn't
Right.
lined at all. And so we have basically all the garbage that was placed there is just seeping into the ground. And so even though we've covered it with dirt, the rain that comes down and falls on top of that filters through the dirt, filters through the garbage, and is going into the groundwater.
Correct.
Okay? So we've bought land around this to keep that from seeping out into those properties and then contaminating the wells that were on those person's property. Now we're going to go back in and put a liner on the top, so when the rain comes down, it doesn't seep into the garbage, it goes around that garbage, so we're no longer having any groundwater contamination.
That's correct.
Now, if we don't do all of this, what are the repercussions from the state?
Well, you're in violation of administrative code at that point. So they can, of course, fine you, so much per day for the end of time. And so we have a problem that's identified through the process, and so it has, some means of remediation has to be carried out.
Okay.
Would, if I'm understanding this correctly too, we've been in violation because of the way, so it's not like we're just, we've been in violation, so the clock's been ticking on us, and then also we're subject to fines every day if we're not working toward remediation.
Correct.
And if we don't do that, not only are we subject to fines, but they could come in and actually do all the work, and then we're stuck with the bill.
That certainly would be an extreme option, but
Right.
they
But that's
could
out
do,
there,
yeah,
so.
I'm certain that they have the right by administrative code.
I just want to make sure the public, each time we go back to this, you need to go back and kind of recap.
Right.
Not
Right, yeah, and
what happened.
I remember a number of like 9 to 10 million was what it was going to cost. So we have been able to, like David was saying, purchase the dirt. We were proactive and was able to purchase the dirt when the 209 project started and was able to do that. And then also, I think the way I look at it is if the rain is not seeping through it, then it should be drying out. It should be dry and get drier and drier to where those chemicals stay there and they're not leaching anymore.
Well, we do have a leachate extraction system that's taking, 1.5 million gallons a year out, out of the, basically the landfill gas wells. And so those are still operating and will be.
Yeah, until you get the, I guess they will from now on.
They will from now on. As long as there's water to pump, it'll pump. And so obviously, it should slow down.
Slow it down
a
to
whole
where,
lot.
yeah, I could see where it would just be, shouldn't be anymore because I would think if we're getting rid of 99%, it would evaporate at some point as it goes down,
So you encapsulate the waste.
Right. But I'm not hearing anything new that we've not already discussed from before by putting the cap on it. I guess we've continued to look at options, but this has probably been the best that we've been able to come up with. And it makes the most sense. It does make common sense, to be able to do that. And we were able to purchase the adjoining properties. That's some of the things that that's been done in the past. It was purchase those properties and get that under control. And then also where we did have wells that were, were maybe had the zines in them, as David says, they have public water now. We were able to take care of some of those issues also.
Well, right, and of course, none of those wells they were tested. None of those wells are contaminated. It's just those wells they were extended public water just as, to be conservative and, to eliminate that concern. But we've never found any wells that were contaminated with anything.
Good. Oh, that's good.
Not off landfill property, not any water supply wells.
What we did is we provided the municipal water availability to those people out there to, even though they wasn't testing positive, it alleviated their concerns and for the concerns for later.
Correct. I mean, the county was proactive in that case. It's just, you have municipal water just like everybody else at this point.
So that was a good move on all.
Mr. Cat, I'm trying to visualize, the first thing you'll probably have to do is go clean off all the existing vegetation. There might be trees in there, I don't know, that penetrate deeply. Is that right?
There are some trees below the access road that goes to the bus garage. There's definitely a lot of trees, and that's becoming a problem by the day, more and more. Some of those trees have died, and then you have stumps and you have infiltration. So that's part of the project. And then, of course, we'll just strip the grass from the rest of it as we bring and then we'll basically abandon the existing gas system, construct the cap at the proper percentages to make sure that there's no standing water on the landfill, and then we'll build the cap back.
Okay, my last question is there a certain type of vegetation you'll put on that won't grow too deep over your membrane?
Oh, well, yes. I mean, the vegetation that we'll specify for the top, of course, most vegetation does not have a very deep root system. We're talking about 2 feet here. So you'll have 2 feet between the top and the membrane. That the vegetation that we'll specify probably wouldn't have more than 3 or 4 inch root mass max.
Thank you.
The propane system, the flare system we have out there, David, haven't we been able to put energy back on the grid by flaring that?
Yes, we flare and we use an engine that converts the methane gas and converts it to electricity and put it on the grid. It's a little bit of an up and down system,
right.
Because we don't have a great filter system for that. And so, there was a lot of contaminants that come through there. Randy Sisk, who's here today, does a great job and doesn't get enough credit. I think some golf courses don't get the care that Randy's put out there for Francis Farm, and takes care of the grass, monitors the extraction wells, the leachate, runs the flare, runs the engine. It's a very technical job, and we're lucky to have Randy's expertise out there. He starts talking, 90 miles a minute about this, that, and the other, and I sort of get glassy-eyed. But he knows, what's going on out there and how things work. So like I said, we'll flare for a while, and then we'll put, we'll turn the engine on, let it run up till its maintenance schedule has come off, turn it off, and turn the flare back on. So it's a combination of the two things. You can't run the engine constantly. We just don't have that size of an engine, and we don't have, that much gas, to be able to, do it 24/7. It'll run for a while, but we can't go 24/7, 365. It's a lot of wear and tear on the engine that we've been, working with that. So it's been a great system. McGill helped us, get that. It was $1 million grant. They were able to install the leachate collection and gas system that Mr. Cathy mentioned. And so that's, helped alleviate some of this, the pressures off of there. And, but it's just still not enough. One of the things I learned from them, that 1 inch of rain creates 27,000 gallons of water over an acre. And so that's a lot of water settling through, hitting the groundwater and migrating off the property. And that, that's one of the reasons we bought that, that property, again, was to be, to come into compliance, with, the gas side of it. Unfortunately, the purchasing the property did not get us in compliance on the groundwater, because it's a little bit deeper shooting out underneath the landfill there. So,
Would, after we finish, and of course, we will continue to have to monitor and keep up with this for many years to come, and I know we've had this discussion before, but for the public or whatever, what could be the usage of this property? I mean, after this is complete?
we've looked at several things. We've looked at from where the Lewis side over to the Stevens side, we've looked at a walking trail. We've discussed not a putting range, what do you call it, driving range, putting a driving range out there. There'll be two large, very acre-esque sediment ponds out there, but we've talked about, trying to figure out a recreation component to it. Of course, you can't get near the gas wells, so we have to be mindful of those things. So we've been batting around a few ideas to be able, where it's just not just totally a dark property, but we can try to find some use for it.
I've read some things, and you all are probably aware of it, that some of the solar people are looking at old landfills and tops to put solar energy on, and actually leasing the property back. Is that a possibility?
The property is under Haywood EMC. That's where we put and I've not had any discussions with them about the solar.
Okay, when you say it's under EMC, HEMC, I mean, it's there in their territory.
It is their territory, right.
But that
doesn't preclude us from, we with FLS, who work, we
well,
did
I seen
some
Duke
work with
Power
them.
was actively looking at that.
Yeah.
And, it was a substantial, not a huge amount of money, but a amount of money, that would come back from the lease. And so I just wondered if that's possibilities.
The cap will be more crowned when we're done. I mean, it's, crowned a little bit now. So I don't know how the
Depends
aspects
on
of
how,
that, because you see a lot of those things in a flat area or kind of rolling. So, but, like I said, we've been discussing ideas. We've had 2 meetings trying to, bat around some ideas. We've been trying to find some recreational to be out there. Recently with the town of Waynesville purchasing the 2 properties over here off of Howell Mill Road, they're expanding there, so I don't know if that would, impact what we're doing as well. But we've batted around a few things, and we'll continue to bat around a couple of ideas that we have.
It'd just be advantageous, I would think, if, if it could possibly generate some kind of income.
Yeah, it would be good, yeah. I'll ask them to look about the solar farms and see. Yeah.
Just quickly on the solar farms, we've worked on numerous solar farms, and we did work on one recently down in Hickory. And so typically you need about 25, 30 acres to get to the megawatt rating that they're looking.
2,500 or 25?
No, 25 to 30 acres to get to a 4 to 5 megawatt system. And so we could definitely do that with the addition of the additional properties. The landfill itself and the footprint's a little small to get there for what most people would like, but it could be evaluated in the future with the addition of other properties after post-closure.
Okay.
David, how many acres do we have over there with the land we bought?
There's about 80.
80 total. And the black line that I seen on the map there, can you tell me the difference between the black and the purple?
That black line is the new facility boundary for the Francis Farm. Let's see here. You see on this one there, Mr. Rogers, this was the purple line around there is the acquired property. What was in the gray was the original landfill.
Okay.
And then the purple is the acquired property. And then coming back to the flume map, this shows, we had wells, we crossed the creek to define the limits of the concentrations of the contaminants. And so, where you have we had put wells, of course, in the center and around the landfill, and we had to define those limits. You keep moving the wells out. We actually drilled, several wells that went into they called it a deep well, where they went and broke down into the groundwater to pull those contaminants out, or to test that water for contaminants. And that's what you'll see while we cross that line, is defining where we could define those elements that were in the land, or contaminants that were in the landfill.
You see any need of having to purchase additional property down the line? Feel comfortable?
This brought us, on the gas, methane gas, this brought us fully in compliance. And as we said, we started working on this in 2009, taking, baby steps through this. We didn't do, go and try to, knock everything all at once. We took our time with this and, worked through the process. So, and when we knew where we were with the groundwater, that's when Mr. Dove and I brought it back and forth to the board about purchasing those additional properties would bring us into compliance, and there wouldn't be any more need to purchase any other properties after this. We created that buffer around there.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions, Commissioners? Okay. Thank you, David. Thank you, Mark.
And I'll be back shortly. We'll talk about the contracts for this proposal.
Okay. Next, we'll move to discussion, adjustment to agenda. Anyone have any changes to the agenda or requests? If not, we'll move to the consent agenda. The first item is request approval of May 15th, 2017 regular and special meeting minutes. Does anyone have any changes or corrections or deletions to those minutes? Okay, if not, we'll move to a request for approval of budget amendments. Julie Davis will come forward. And Julie, I'll let you present each one of those budget amendments.
Good morning.
Morning.
I have just a few budget amendments for you, but the first one is a little bit extensive. Toward the end of the year, we get some requests from departments as they have some unexpected expenses that hit their budgets, and we try to clean those up, things that they truly have to pay. You'll notice that in human resources, our retiree health insurance is coming in a little higher than we had planned. In land records, the rent of equipment, this is basically copies. Their copiers, I think they're touching about 25% more documents than they have in the past. In legal, other attorney, this is related to some personnel cases. In Register of Deeds, these are all related to revenues coming in. As revenues come in higher, the expenses that are related to those revenues, for example, marriage license fees come in, and there are certain amounts that have to be sent to the state for the domestic violence prevention and those type of things. In public safety, I have detention. I have a couple of high amounts in detention. The inmate medical is coming in higher than we expected. We need to pay the medical expenses for the inmates that are in the care of the Haywood County Detention. And the inmate meals are coming a little bit higher too. Apparently the population is up just a little bit. The dental clinic is $8,000 here. It's got a revenue related. That and the Register of Deeds have revenue related. So what I've done is I've taken the contingency, which is $113,598, and spread it across all these departments that needed a little extra money to get through the end of the year. I'd be glad to answer any questions about any of that if I can.
Any questions about those, Commissioners?
Wondering about the contingency account. Is that where this is coming from?
This is the contingency in the general fund, and what I did is I just took the full amount of it because I don't expect to need it by the next meeting. I will have some more budget amendments, but there's probably going to be some revenue increases that I'll be able to use.
So this kind of zeroes out our contingency.
Yes, it does.
From last year. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And just looking at some of these items, I mean, a lot of them are unfortunate. I mean, some of these things are where the county just has to defend itself. And other items, when we have inmates in our detention facility, we have to take care of them. I mean,
Sheriff was telling us, I think was it Brandon and I? We were talking to the sheriff, and he was just talking about the amount of medical needs that he has. Because a lot of these people are you know, they're on substance abuse, and they're in the detention center, and by, you know, the courts have ruled that we have to take care of them. And he was saying that his nurse is just busy all the time. And understand detention being up.
All right, Commissioners, any other questions about that budget amendment? Okay, if not, we'll go to the next one.
The next one is the Sheriff's Office. This is a request from the Sheriff's Office to use the drug seizure funds, $3,800 of those, to purchase a used vehicle from the Pathway Center. And there's a quote in here for $3,800 for a 2007 Chevrolet. In addition to that, there's some donations that have been given to the Sheriff's Office that they'd like to use before the end of June in their department. So the total of this is $4,150, the $3,800 plus $350.
Okay, Commissioners, any questions about that? All right, next matter.
And the last one here is our workers' compensation claims fund. I don't usually bring anything of this to you. It's been kind of calm over the years, but this year we need $155,000 from fund balance in that particular fund in order to cover some claims and some settlements through the end of June.
How much is in that?
There's almost $1 million in that fund.
So that's a fund balance of that fund.
Of that fund, yes, a particular fund. This is just workers' comp that goes through this particular fund.
It's good that you have that kind of a fund balance for that.
It's nice. We've used it for health insurance. If you'll remember, over the past couple of years, we've moved it from the workers' comp into health insurance before to keep from hitting the general fund.
And that's paying the, and I know some of this is obvious to other people, but it may not be obvious to all of our viewers, but those monies are to pay employees of the county who have been hurt while working on the job.
Hurt while working, exactly.
Okay. All right, thank you, Julie.
Thank you.
If there is no other discussion about the consent agenda, I would entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
Any questions or discussions? All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, and that passes unanimously. Next, we'll move to old business. Got our Dove here to present about the confirmation of contract for sale of county-owned property.
Yes. Good morning, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, members of the public. We were back here earlier in May to have an amendment to the agreement for purchase and sale of real property, being the Health Department, and that agreement was to sell to Mountain Projects. Pursuant to statute, after the Commission agreed to have the amendment to agreement for purchase and sale of real property, the property was duly re-advertised. That time period has now run, and we are bringing it back for confirmation after advertising.
Okay, and have you and Chip looked over this amendment to agreement for purchase and sale of real property? Are you satisfied with it?
Yes, and as a matter of fact, it was approved earlier by this board, but because it was significantly changed from their previous resolution that was done several months ago, the county manager and I felt we should re-advertise it since it was a significant change, and that's why it's back before the board now, but it's been approved by this board.
Okay. Commissioners, have any questions or discussion about this particular sale or purchase of the terms of this agreement?
I just want to make sure, is it okay that I vote for this? Is it okay if I vote for this? Should I recuse myself since my wife works for Mountain Projects?
Well, I understand you recused yourself before. That's up to you as long as the chair accepts that. I think it's your choice. I don't think it's required, but it's all right if you choose to.
Yeah, it's not an economic benefit.
It's not an economic benefit. It's not really a conflict.
Is deriving from that. So I think, all they're doing is purchasing the property. So I think you're okay.
Okay, just want to make sure.
If you want to, I don't mind, but I don't think you have to.
I'll vote.
All right, any other questions or discussion?
The only comment I have after meeting, two or three meetings in that facility, they are in need. You need to go into the basement and see what they have to crawl into to check the furnace or something when it rains and the water coming in. So this is definitely an upgrade for a group that does a great job for the county.
Okay. All right. I will entertain a motion to confirm the contract for sale of the county-owned property being the old Haywood County Health Department building for the purchase price by Mountain Projects in the amount of $325,000. And along with that comes the in-kind services of Dale Burris, who will be assisting them in the renovation of that particular building.
So move.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, and that passes unanimously. All right, I think that will be really good for the county. It continues Mountain Project's expansion, guarantees those employees will remain here, and also at least make something viable out of that building that keeps us from having to maintain it. Next, we have new business. And this is request to approve of contracts for the assessment for corrective measures that we just talked about for the corrective action plan for selection and design for remedies for Francis Farm landfill. David Francis.
Again, for you we have 4 contracts, 1 for McGill Associates and 3 for BLE. The McGill Associates is in the amount of $195,000. Is to begin the plan for the anticipated remedy to construct the new cap for landfill consisting of the geomembrane and the soils that will be placed on the Francis Farm. The BLE contracts is contract for geotechnical engineering for the landfill cover design of $20,000. Also, the BLE and McGill work in conjunction with each other to be able to submit these plans to the North Carolina Department of Environmental Quality. Contract for corrective action plan, or the CAP plan for BLE, and $25,000. And the other contract is to finish up the assessment for corrective measures for the ACM that will be turned over to DEQ. The McGill contract will be over 1,200 man-hours in to get this plan ready for construction. This contract will lead up from now until the day that we go to bid. And then after that time, we'll have to have a construction management contract. And then it's also required, administrative code requires a CQA, a construction quality control as well too, that BLE will do it. So whoever will be up here in 2019 will be presenting those to you as well too for 2 other engineering. But the engineering plan will get us from now till the date that we go to bid in 2019. So it's a multi-year contract, and of course it is a multi-year process.
Okay, commissioners, have any questions of David? And David, have you taken the time to vet out the McGill, and of course we've worked with them for a long time, and BLE, which is Bunnell Lammon's engineering, as far as costs and actually the ability to obtain services elsewhere?
We have, looked at, we looked at the cost. We did have a contract meeting with McGill that Mr. Dove, Julie Davis, the finance director, we all sat in. Mr. Burris was there as well too. We sat in there with Mr. Cathy and went over this contract, per the hours, things like that. We've looked at other engineering firms, but the amount of time that McGill is and knows the history of the landfill, that we feel like it would not be advantageous for the county to go out and search for another engineering firm that would basically have to start over from scratch and get up to speed with all the history, all the documents and things like that. So that's, like I said, they've been with us. They've done a very much a lot of hard work for us. They got the $1 million grant, saved us the $1 million with the acquiring the dirt from 209. So they've done a lot of work for us on our behalf. It saved us a lot of money as well too.
So you all feel pretty comfortable that due to all the work and all the documentation that's already been done, that it's actually potentially a savings to stay with them rather than looking.
I do. Yeah.
Okay, Commissioners, have any other questions?
David, the only question I'll have is, I think you said in 2015 is when we started with the increase. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
That's covering the expenses here?
Yes,
Just
sir.
making sure I understood that right.
That's correct, yeah. In 2015, the availability fee was raised to $164.
164?
Yes, sir. Yeah.
All right, all these contracts and expenditures and monies, and I bet you that if you go back and find out what's in that landfill, 50% of it could have been recycled.
Yeah.
And
Or the other 50% may not have should have been there too. So.
Yes.
Yeah.
we know some of that went in there.
It was probably a little bit more than just household hazardous waste that went into that landfill.
I'll bet if you paid to have it shipped to South Carolina or Georgia's landfills, we would have saved money too. Guarantee you.
now,
But these
Yeah.
contaminants in here are not, contaminants from somebody dumping their household waste.
Yeah, they come from some of our industrial sites that was in the county, and
Yeah.
DACO, but you didn't even hear anymore.
pretty much just took anything. It didn't matter. We just-
From talking to residents out there through time, we think it's pretty much what Mr. Inslee said. It came from one particular manufacturer.
all right.
Yeah.
So we don't really need to disturb that landfill.
I don't know if that's a place I'd go mine
Let
right
it
now.
lie.
Yeah.
If I heard you correctly too, David, you said that we built that landfill by the state regulations that were in place at that time?
Yeah, and the time, Title D didn't come into effect until 1976. If we had waited 3 more years, it would have been lined. It's just that. And so that's when you had to start lining landfills. But when it was built to specifications then, it was not lined. And part of the problem too is that the waste was not just contained in that cap area at the very top. It went outside that cap area as well too. And so that's what's caused some of the issues that we've had.
All right, thank you. With that, I'll entertain a motion to approve the contracts for the assessment corrective measures and corrective action plan for the selection and design of remedies for French Farm Landfill for McGill and Associates, contract $195,000, and Bono Lamons Engineering, $63,000.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
And those opposed, and that passes unanimously. And next, we've got the request for approval of the budget amendment for the Capital Project Fund, Solid Waste Management, for $258,000 to cover the cost of the ACM CAP for the Francis Farm Landfill, $215,000 from Solid Waste budget, $43,000 from Solid Waste Fund balance. Julie.
What I'm doing right now is affecting 2 funds, the Solid Waste Management Fund that you just mentioned and a capital project fund. We're moving this into a capital project. This is expected to last more than the fiscal year. And the money was budgeted in the Solid Waste Management Fund. So what I'm doing is taking where it was budgeted, that $215,000, reducing that line item and increasing the line item for a transfer into the capital project fund. So the capital project fund is going up $258,000. The transfer to the capital project fund from solid waste is going up $215,000. And that difference is already in there to be transferred.
Okay, Commissioners, have any questions of Julie? If not, I'll entertain a motion to approve those budget amendments as presented by Julie.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, and that passes unanimously. Thank you, Julie. Next is a request approval for the First Amendment to the Interlocal Cooperation Agreement between Haywood County and Junaluska Sanitary District. David Francis.
Commissioners, last year, Junaluska Sanitary District came before you, and part of the grant program with the Golden Leaf, JSD had made a grant application to the Golden Leaf to extend sewer out 209 basically from where the Smoky Mountain Rehab Center is out to where Riverbend Elementary is located. So this sewer, will serve two businesses out there and the elementary. We've already had several interest in business that we've located business there presently. They are waiting on this project. I've had several interest in there from hotels that they're waiting for the sewer to get out there to where they can start negotiating with the property owners about putting a new hotel out there off of exit 24. So I think this project's going to pay dividends for the county and for the citizens once it gets up and running. But the problem when we made the grant application, it was for $1,500,000. Golden Leaf came back in with $1 million grant, and the state revolving fund had a certain portion of $2.2 million in this as well too. So JSD had to go back and scramble, trying to get the necessary funding to finish this project, because it's going to take all of the nearly $4 million to get this done. So what they have asked us to do, instead of having to dig into their fund balance, is to go ahead and extend this payment plan that we have listed out here now, is that $75,000 on June 9th, $75,000 on August 9th, and $100,000 on October 9th, which will get them through all of the planning and permitting that they need to get done to get this project underway. Met with Josh Nichols, the executive or the director for Junaluska Sanitation District, their engineers. Ira and I had a conference with them 2 weeks ago, looking over their plans and how they're moving forward with this. They are, like I said, they're a little bit behind where they wanted to be, trying to fill in that gap for the $500,000 that they needed to make up. I've been working with them as well, trying to find some other funding sources. I'm presently working on another grant through the state, and we're working with Haywood Advancement Foundation as well too, trying to fill those gaps in. So I respectively ask that we consider this schedule. I think that we'll be out to bids in October on this, and hopefully start construction there soon thereafter. This also includes the surveying for the project as well too. So what we are doing is paying all those designing, permitting, and surveying costs for the project.
Commissioners have questions?
Yeah, not really a question, but this money we're talking about, it was appropriated by the county for this project, for this kind of stuff, and they're just asking that we move up the schedule and, release it a little earlier than we were normally going to release it.
Correct.
And,
That's
yeah,
correct.
and this is, being on the Economic Development Council, this was, and actually Golden Leaf, when they had these grants available there about a year ago or so, they reached out to the county and said, what's your most desirable plan, or, to try to create economic development, to bring, additional development and jobs into the area. And as a county and as the commissioners and also the EDC identified the corridor, the 209 corridor, and especially exit 27 or 24, as the ideal situation that would be the most beneficial for something, and that's what we did, and we submitted it, and we, it was up to 1.5, but we ended up with 1 million. So that's how we got to where we are. But the county had to put up.
We had to put a grant in for them to be able to receive.
We had to have, as the saying is, we had to have skin in the game, and other people had to have skin in the game. So that was our part of it.
Correct.
So we did get a grant, is that right?
Yeah. Back in June of last year, we had approved the grant and the contract back in June of 2016 for the $300,000, but we had approved the $300,000 back in 2015 when they were making an application to the Golden Leaf Foundation at that time. Okay. So we formalized, we approved it in theory in 15, and then approved the contract in June of 2016. And like I said, they're wanting to modify it where they can get those payments a little bit sooner than what we had anticipated.
That money's already been budgeted. It's just been sitting there waiting.
It's setting aside. Yeah, the money's budgeted and setting aside. Correct.
David, how much was the grant that we got?
from Golden Leaf, $1 million. And then our contribution was 300,000, and the state revolving fund is now, instead of 2.2, it's up to 2.75 something right now. And
Zero interest loan or something?
Zero, that's correct. I was going to say it's a zero interest loan. That part of it has to be.
Sanitary District was chipping in some money too.
Yeah, and they've chipped in some as well too. Theirs is going to, go up as the project goes on, but right now they've got $51,000 that they've put in so far.
And who will be putting in the infrastructure?
A contractor will be, it will go out to bid, just like when we put out for contracting, it'll be the same process as that will. But they're using an engineering firm out of Asheville that is designing the system, because if you know it's going to have to go under the river, and come out. So it's a little bit of a trickier design than just going straight down the highway, because we do have to go under the river and have to go under 40 as well too. So we had hoped to be able to run the line across the bridge on 40, but they've stopped that for various reasons, I guess.
It will be part of Junaluska's sanitary district, and they'll maintain the line.
Yeah, it's outside of the district, but they will maintain the line. It'll be their responsibility. They've already run water out to the school, and the sewer system will follow that water line for the most part. The water line has an easier path than the sewer system does, so that's why we'll have to go underneath the 40 and go underneath the Pigeon, and then come back up on the other side. So it's a little bit trickier.
This will save the school system a lot of money with an aging sewer system.
Yeah, they have an aging sewer system. They've done a little maintenance to it. When we were discussing the sewer system with the environmental health folks, it is basically on the clock. And then they don't have a repair area, so to speak, there. And if they did have to create that repair area, it would be much more than what the 300,000 the county's giving.
It's, if I'm not mistaken, isn't it one of those old sand systems?
It is a sand, it is a sand system.
They are very maintenance. They have to have lots of maintenance.
Yeah, it's maintenance intensive. They have to have some sort of maintenance out there every month to take care of that. So this will alleviate that as well.
David, when's this supposed to start?
We'll start in October. Yeah, bids will put the notice for bid out in October, and hopefully start sometime in February of 2018, and it'll take about 6 to 8 months to construct.
You don't see any problems with that? I mean, and I guess, and I ask that because we're going to forward advance funds earlier than we thought. I just want to make sure when we do so that this project will continue.
And also a part of our agreement to commissioners is that if this project doesn't go through, we get paid back.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not that we're giving them money, and if it doesn't happen, a part of the agreement it does, and that part of the agreement does not change with this amendment at all. We will be paid back if the project goes through or fails in any particular fashion. So yeah, we're protected in that sense.
All right, commissioners, have any questions? Any more questions? If not, I'll entertain a motion to approve the First Amendment to the Interlocal Cooperation Agreement between Haywood County and Junaluska Sanitary District as David has presented it.
So, second. Any
discussion? All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, and that passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you, David. It's going to be a good thing for Haywood County. Next is a request approval of appointment of Katie Gould to fill the unexpired term vacated by Laura Leatherwood. Our Dove.
Yes. Dr. Laura Leatherwood has taken a position to be a community college president, and therefore left this vacancy on the TDA. The town of Clyde is recommending Katie Gould, who is the small business director of Haywood Community College, to fill that TDA seat that was vacated, and asking for approval.
Any questions, commissioners? I'll entertain a motion that Katie Gould be appointed to fill the unexpired term vacated by Laura Leatherwood for the municipal representative for Clyde to the Tourism Development Authority Board.
So move.
Second, and congratulations to Laura, by the way.
I believe that's Blue Ridge Community College.
Yes. All right. Any other discussion? All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, and that passes unanimously. Next We have request approval of resolution of support for adequate funding to meet the mental health, intellectual, and developmental disabilities and substance abuse disorder service needs for the citizens of Haywood County. Ira?
Yes. Commissioner Upton serves on the Commissioner Advisory Committee for BIA Mental Health, which is the mental health services in our area, 23 county catchment area. And that commission, after reviewing some of the information presented by BIA, had voted for a resolution to ask for the restoration of funding. Essentially, a few years ago, several $100 million was removed from the state budget for mental health funding from the General Assembly, and they went to over the biennium, went to the LME MCOs and asked them to use their fund balances, most of which were generated by being efficient in saving Medicaid dollars, to replace that money. Instead of using the state tax dollars, they asked for the LME MCOs to use their fund balances. Simultaneously, in keeping with the purpose, the LME MCOs were supposed to be reinvesting those fund balances in savings to create an expansion of mental health. And that led to a situation where, for a few years for VIA, and I cannot speak for the other groups because I'm not familiar with their finances. For VIA, they were able to sustain the first few years, and they did the re-expansion. They started to do the reinvestment in services, and then instead of stopping at 2 years, they've now asked to extend and not put the couple of $100 million of state funding back, but asked that the LME MCOs continue to, and this is what we were advised in that meeting, continue to pay the state's share of several things. So you may have what looks like a big fund balance initially. It gets depleted over a few years. You start to do the reinvestment, and then there comes a point, and we were advised that by July 1st, if the state plan keeps going into place, you have the spendable fund balance, and then the money that you have to keep that's required by Medicaid, and the money that you'd have to keep to pay your bills and stuff like that. The spendable fund balance for VIA would be down to less than 7%, which would pretty much end their ability to do a lot of the community reinvestment that they wanted to do. So that's why they asked the Commissioner Advisory Committee, which passed a resolution, to also ask that everybody go to their counties and put that before. And I have, I believe, forwarded you an email from Shelley Foreman, who's here today, which detailed a lot more information on this. Resolution of support for adequate funding to meet the mental health, intellectual, and developmental disabilities and substance abuse or substance use disorder service needs for citizens of Haywood County. Whereas Haywood County knows that citizens dealing with mental illness and substance use disorders can achieve recovery with the right services and supports, and that citizens with intellectual and developmental disabilities can live productive lives in our communities with appropriate services and supports. And whereas the need for services and supports for these individuals is increasing due to North Carolina's growing population and opioid epidemic in North Carolina and across the United States, and whereas the North Carolina General Assembly previously significantly reduced state funding for mental health, intellectual and developmental disabilities, and substance abuse or substance use disorder services, and had the local LME MCO absorb the difference. And whereas, in accordance with the intent of the North Carolina General Assembly and the North Carolina Department of Health and Human Services, the Governing Board of BIA Health developed and is implementing a robust community reinvestment plan to use savings that is benefiting the citizens of our catchment area, including Haywood County. At this point, I'm going to stop and say that I am a member of that board that is referred to here, just for full disclosure, so I can say that I have seen them do these reinvestment plans. Whereas VIA's reinvestment plan included purchase and distribution of more than 2,600 opioid reversal kits, expansion of the Youth Villages Intercept program that helps prevent out-of-home placement for children, increased funding for YV Lifestead, or Youth Villages Lifestead services for children aging out of foster care, development and ongoing support for 2 behavioral health urgent care centers, development of substance use recovery housing, improving integrated care through workforce development training, including training for direct support professionals who serve persons with IDD, support for community programs that create affordable housing options, prevent eviction, and help individuals with disabilities access housing and other forms of federal aid, and installation of Mind Care kiosk across the catchment area to help reduce stigma and provide a convenient way for citizens to learn about services. And whereas the budget reductions can no longer be absorbed by VIA Health without jeopardizing services to citizens of the VIA catchment area, negatively impacting the lives of those in need, as well as potentially impacting the local economy through job loss. Now therefore be it resolved that we, the Board of Commissioners for Haywood County, do hereby request that the North Carolina General Assembly maintain full state funding for mental health, developmental disabilities, and substance use services without further reductions, and commit to increasing state funding for mental health, developmental disabilities, and substance use services in order to serve the growing numbers of indigent, uninsured, and underinsured population.
All right, Commissioners, have any questions about that resolution?
When we were at the regional commissioners meeting, this was one of the issues that was brought up about the increase in mental health issues throughout the whole state, and then the legislature reducing. And then also, just like when we talked with the sheriff the other day and was talking about all the issues that they were having with the substance abuse and all and the mental health issues. And so it's a little bit, it's disconnecting as to all the issues seem to be growing up, and they keep continuing to defund the particular issues that are problems that are really creating massive problems for our communities.
Yeah, yes. What they'll say is that they restored some of the funding to help cover that, but the cut, you have to see the cut, you have to look back a few years. Mm-hmm. And so if you take a $200 million cut over time and carry that forward and then restore some of that funding, it doesn't meet the need.
Yeah.
I was looking at Shelley, correct me if I'm wrong, I was looking at the House budget and the Senate budget this week. I think you sent us, and there's a cut. Both houses have cut that, and yet we know, like Mike has said, mental health issues and the use of painkillers is increasing. And, if a person has that, you can't send them to the hospital for 2 or 3 days and they come out there well. We talk about 12 to 18 months to truly get somebody recovered. Am I right? 18 months, Shelley, for somebody to fully recover from the issues. This is a long process, and we talk about a bunch of money for families that really can't afford it.
Well, and you're exactly right. Recovery is a very long-term process, and this reduction, because it's been carried forward for so many budget cycles, is truly eroding the service system for people who don't have insurance and don't qualify for Medicaid. That is the crux of the issue. We know that addiction issues continue to rise. We know that, as County Manager Dove said, we've used our Medicaid community reinvestment dollars to try to support programs, but we have to have operational funds to keep those moving forward. The Balsam Center, we just expanded their service program, and they're getting ready to implement what's called a behavioral health urgent care that would allow law enforcement to transition custody, for them to be available 24/7, but those people have state funds. They don't qualify for Medicaid, so that's why the funding is so critical for so many people.
I saw a program, it's only been a couple of weeks ago, about a big city mental health problem, and actually the sheriff, they interviewed him. and they talked about how the jails are becoming a mental health facility because there's no place for them to go.
Right.
And so we just had to up payments for medical care in our sheriff, in our jail, and we had to increase meal money because they're there. And they're having to hold them because they can't go any place with them, and that's the only place. So if they go back out on the street, they're just coming right back in. So we got a problem going on, and I mean it's really rampant. I mean, just you know, and you talk about the addiction, the opioid crisis, but you know, just mental health in general. You know, I know some incidences in our county where people need to be seen, and the families are besides themselves because, you know, they try to get them committed or try to get them help, and they go in and they're seen and they're right back out because they do not have the facilities for them. And, you know, and then they end up in jail. You know, they'll be in jail for a while, so.
And I will say Sheriff Christopher truly is a leader in being able to think about behavioral health issues as far as trying to work towards keeping people out of the detention center. We recently attended a conference together called Stepping Up, which will be looking at how we can divert people from detention centers. But the bottom line is, we have to have treatment resources for people, and if there are people who don't have Medicaid, we're asking our comprehensive providers to serve more and more and more people that don't have Medicaid. And just one last thing, people with developmental disabilities who do not qualify for the innovations waiver, which is a special waiver, they're at serious risk if these state funding reductions continue. The ADVIT programs, the day programs, people's homes where they're placed could be at jeopardy because you can't continue to take money out of the system year after year.
Any other questions? All right. I will entertain a motion to approve the resolution of support for adequate funding to meet the mental health, intellectual, and development disabilities and substance abuse disorder service needs for citizens of Haywood County.
So move.
Second.
Any other discussion? All in favor indicate by saying aye.
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 Those opposed? And that passes unanimously. Thank you, Shelley.
Thank you, Shelley.
Thank you,
Follow
Ira.
up with an update on what happens, so we'll know more hopefully in the
Okay.
next month. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, County Manager Dove.
All right, next we'll move to closed session, if there's nothing else for open session right now. And I'll entertain a motion for us to move into closed session for personnel under North Carolina General Statute, Section 143, 318.11A6.
So move.
Motion second.
Second.
All right, all in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All right, we are in closed session. Okay, we are back after closed session. Does anyone have any issues for open session? Remaining issues? Okay. If not, I'll entertain a motion that we adjourn this meeting. We're getting ready to have a work session right after this.
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
We are adjourned.